That's okay. That is all right. So let's get started. Open your Bible if you got your Bible handy. So we're going to start working our way through this, okay?
Okay.
A little bit of a time. So let's start at Genesis, starting in 1:1.
Okay.
And I want you read it to me and read all the way through through 27. Let's just kind of read that together.
All right. Through 27.
Yep.
All right. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So the evening and the morning were the first day. Then God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." Thus God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. So the evening and the morning were the second day. Then God said, "Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and he gathered together of the waters, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb that yields seed, and the fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself, on the earth," and it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, the herb that yields seed according to its kind, and the tree that yields fruit, whose seed is in itself according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. So the evening and the morning were the third day. Then God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons, and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth." And it was so. Then God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. God set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. So the evening and the morning were the fourth day. Then God said, "Let the waters abound with abundance of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the face of the firmament of the heavens." So God created great sea creatures and every living thing that moves, with which the waters abounded, according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth." So the evening and the morning were the fifth day. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth the living creature according to its kind, cattle and creeping thing and beast of the earth, each according to its kind." And it was so. And God made the beast of the earth according to its kind, cattle according to its kind, and everything that creeps on the earth according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created them.
So the Bible starts out with this account of creation. Couple of things that, as you were reading, that struck me even now is, you know how Adam named all the animals?
Right.
Who named everything before that? Who called the sky?
God did.
Yeah, God did all of that in his creation. Why? So would it have been the same without the creation story? What would the Bible be like without the creation story? So the people came out of Egypt, right? They
Right.
had to understand who God was. So why didn't God just say, I'm God, listen to me and do these things?
Well,
Why did he give Moses the account of creation?
I would say the two reasons I would say would be one, to tell them, essentially to show them I spoke all this into existence, but two, really to, I mean, to me, it's the final stage, right? Of emphasizing you were created in my image. He's not just some random God out there that's like, hey, I created you, but we specifically were created in his image, and he specifically commanded us to take dominion over everything, unlike all the other creation.
So God established himself, the God of the Hebrews established himself in the very beginning as the God who made everything we see and know.
Yeah.
That he established himself that way. Okay.
Including everything we don't see, because he talks about creating the entire heavens.
So what we don't think about this, so how does it start out? What's the first three words?
In the beginning.
In the beginning. In the beginning. I am the Alpha and the Omega, right? I am the first and the last.
Right.
There's a Christian song that goes, when the trumpet of the Lord shall sound, and time shall be no more. Where's that come from? Time shall be no more.
Is that in Revelation?
Is that scriptural?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know the reference. I don't know. Let me put it this way. Yes, I don't know if there's a direct reference that says time will end, or if it's an inference based on how things are described.
Well, and so we are bound. So it's interesting. This starts out in the beginning. So did God exist before the beginning?
Yes.
He existed before even all this stuff came into being.
Right.
So in the beginning. So we always talk about the creation story being a story about God creating the heavens and the earth and putting all this into play. What we don't talk about very much is, and we're bound by that, by the way, we're on this planet, we're bound by the physical laws of this planet, including time. And the Bible is real clear that God is not bound by time. Right? God exists outside of time. So in the beginning, what did he create besides the heaven and the earth? Just something to think about.
I heard an apologist say this. He said, God created time, space, and matter.
Yep. God created time, space, and matter. So God created a beginning of what we know as time. Biblically, is there an end to this time?
Yes.
Yes. So this world in which we live is bound up by time. That makes sense?
Yeah.
We're bound by time. God is not bound by that. And so that's why he can tell us what the future is, and no other God can, because he's the one that created time. And he exists outside of time. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So in the beginning, God created, an apologist or whatever, but that there's truth to that. He created this thing that we call time and that we're bound by.
Yeah.
Okay. So God established himself not in the very beginning about creating man and creating the universe and everything else. God is also telling us that he created this thing called time and that we're bound by it. So like in the Old Testament, where time went backwards by a day, remember the story about the king and time goes backwards? How can he do that? Because he's not bound by it.
Yeah.
He lives outside of it. He's not bound by it at all. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the account of creation starts with in the beginning, God, and specifically him, Elohim, created the heavens and the earth. So what existed then before that creation? We don't know. Right? That's some of the stuff that our little finite minds cannot comprehend.
Right.
Time has always been and always marches onward. Space marches onward. You want to get yourself a headache, think about that.
Yeah.
So what's beyond what we can see in the universe? What about if the universe ends? What's beyond that? It's got to be more space. We don't understand it. And we try and understand it in our finite knowledge of physics and all that stuff. So in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So if he called the first day, he called day and night. So God tells Moses that his first act of creation, the first day, right, was to create what? Let's run through these real quick. What did he create first?
Day and night, separation of light and darkness.
Okay, he created day and night, light and darkness.
Well, technically, he created light, which therefore darkness is the absence of light. So
Darkness is the absence of light. He created, when the universe was created, it was dark, and he established a light to go between the dark and the night. So he says the earth was without what?
Without form.
It wasn't formed yet. So a lot of people, including me, got confused with, well, wait a minute, the first day he created, night and day, but the earth was not really formed yet. So he really wasn't talking about, later on, he's going to talk about the sun and the moon and putting all that stuff in place. The very first thing he did was he created light. He created whatever, they call it the Big Bang Theory. You can call it whatever you want. He created out of nothing.
Yeah.
He created light. And in that creation, the earth was just this, whatever it was. Okay. It wasn't what probably it wasn't even a round globe then. I don't know. But he created it, but it wasn't yet formed. So it goes bang, and he creates this thing called light, darkness, and light is what he does. Keep getting this thing for a new chat request from somebody on my Teams. I don't like answering those. And who are you? What's going on here? Okay. So and when you look at the sequence of all of this, you know what? People don't, you think about, a lot of people say, well, these were ignorant people that wrote this and stuff, but the sequence of this, of creation, the creation story that God tells Moses to tell us is pretty, what do I want to say? Pretty distinct, it's logical, because what's the second thing he creates? So it goes bang, and all this stuff comes into existence. Then what's he do?
He creates he separates waters above from waters below and creates a firmament.
What's the firmament? What is it? What's he talking about there?
He's got
an earth that's without form and void. And the second thing he does is, so this blob, if you will, that we call earth today, when he first did it, it was without form. There was nothing there. And so basically it says that God, the second day, God took that thing without form, and it was a collection of water and it was a collection of rock and on the earth. And God, in the second day, he then created this thing we call sky. He calls it sky. It's called a firmament. So we've got waters like in the ocean and the lakes and the rivers and all that stuff, but we've also got waters above us.
Right.
We got they're clouds. We got clouds. That's important to understand because in the days of Noah, right, it hadn't rained yet. So the earth was created, the water became part of the earth and turned to the oceans and lakes and everything else. But above, he created another waters above. And it's interesting because I've always believed this. Why did man live so long before the flood? Why did they live to be 1,000? And then all of a sudden after the flood, they didn't live so long.
So in my research, scientists have researched the idea of a water canopy and what that would do from a pressurized system. And they actually have, I hear they use it in sports medicine. They actually recreate that pressurized system to help these NFL players and whatnot heal faster.
Yeah, they wouldn't grow as tall. But the other thing that cloud does, and the cloud does for us today, it shields us from the sun's radiation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things that ages us. They tell you all the time, if you're going to go out in the sun, you're going to age if you don't protect your skin. They were protected. And I believe that in the second day, God established initially that protection for his creation. So he's got this expanse. He's got all this water. It's just a blob with water, right? And so he doesn't talk about gravity at all in the creation days, but what holds everything in place, and you talk about pressure, is what? Is gravity. Gravity is kind of a form of holding everything in place, so holding the pressure around the earth. So the second day, he separates and he forms this canopy. Okay, what's he do on the third day?
That one, he creates the dry land.
Okay, so now he's got a bunch of water. There's water above and water below. Day 2, he talks about separating the waters, is what he does.
Right. So that's where he separates the water and then brings up dry land.
Then he brings now the dry lands, the upheaval of the earth, the dry land is going to come up and the water is going to go into what we call seas and oceans and lakes. Okay. So he creates dry land. Okay. What's next?
Well, and part of that, he brings forth all the vegetation as well.
Yep. It starts the vegetation because now so where do the seeds come from? Vegetation. Where is this stuff coming from?
Yeah.
He's establishing himself as the creator, not just of man, Joel. He's establishing himself as the God who created all of this stuff. So he creates dry land, and all of a sudden vegetation comes up. How did it get started? That old joke about Satan comes before God and he goes, you've heard that, right?
Which one?
I can create man. That's not that hard. I can do that. And God says, go ahead. So Satan gets down. I can create a form out of dirt. And so he shoves down, gets the dirt in his hand, and God says, stop. Make your own dirt.
Yeah.
That type of stuff. So a lot of times we'll back up and we'll look at this like from a big picture standpoint, but from a big picture standpoint, what he's telling us and what he's telling mankind is that he created this out of nothing. What you said, time and space, right? What we call time and space. He created that. That boggles my mind. Right? Yeah. Because what in the world, where was he and what was before? He doesn't tell us what was before. because I don't think we'd be able to understand that anyway. He
I don't
just
think so.
says, I'm going to create. And in the end of it, we know that he created all of this for what? For man. So
Yeah.
he had a purpose in the beginning. That's why the canopy and all of that, everything was set in place. He had to put all the pieces had to be put in place so that man could occupy this, so we could occupy this and have dominion over it. Okay, fourth day.
So it'd be land and seas, and then that's when he puts the sun, moon, and stars in the sky.
All right. So everything, not just the earth, now he's ordering the universe. Because if you go on, what do we use that for? To determine what?
Right.
the
Days,
scriptures.
weeks, months. It's so we can
Seasons.
track time.
Seasons, all of that.
Yeah.
So he gave us in his creation, and later on when he yells, when he kind of admonishes Job, he says, "Where were you when I measured the expanse of the sky and I put all this in place?" So we tend to focus on the earth, but the reality is that everything, including the stars and the constellations and everything else, he said that he measured it out and he put it in place on purpose so that we could measure days, times, seasons, all of that stuff. He didn't put it in place so we could have astrology. He put it in place so that we could measure what? Measure
Time.
time. So that we could measure, that's going back to time, so that we could measure time. We could measure seasons, because it's going to be this cyclic system that the earth is going to undergo. So he's put that in place even before man comes on, so that man will be able to tell time. We'll be able to live within time itself and be able to function within time itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That's like before clocks, how did man determine what the time was?
Position of the sun and the moon and the stars. Well, really the sun.
Now, how did man navigate? He navigated by the stars.
Yeah.
And those people who were on ships, how did they know where they were? They navigated by the stars. They
Yeah.
told time by the stars. I heard this the other day. I never thought about it. When we talk about time, it says, "Oh, let's meet at 11 o'clock." Where's o'clock coming from? Why do we say o'clock?
I think it's of the clock, right? Is that what it came from?
It came from of the clock, because before the mechanical clock, right, they told time differently by sundials, by sunrise, sunset, all of that.
When the
So
sun
when the
meets
clock
its
came into play and the mechanical clock, they started saying, "Oh, it's 3," to distinguish between all the other ways of telling time. They said 3 of the clock, and then it became 3 of clock, and then just 3 o'clock. We still use that today without really understanding where that came from. But I'm going to go back to time. But God created a universe that we could tell time, and we could live by time. We could live in this dimension of time.
Yeah.
So not just the physical dimensions that we know, it's the dimension of, he's put in place this dimension called time that he is not bound by.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, he's not bound by time.
Yeah.
Which is important. Why is that so important to understand? Why do we need to understand that? Because in the Bible, God challenges all these other gods, and he says, "You got your gods?" He says, "Have them tell us what's going to happen. Have them tell us the future."
Yeah.
All of that. And he says they can't, because they're not God. And it goes all the way back to this story of creation. God himself created all of this. He's not bound by it, but he created all of it, and we're bound by it. We're on the earth. We're bound. This is where we're going to live. We keep trying to escape it. I got a friend that works for NASA, and this is what he told me one day. He says, we could send a man to Mars. That's not that hard. He goes, it's hard. And I go, "What's that?" He goes, "They'll be dead before they get there." He says we can't keep them alive long enough to get there because of the radiation exposure, because they're outside their canopy. They're
Yeah.
outside the protection zone. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So we are really, when God created this, people look at me like I'm nuts. I says, we want to escape it, and we're trying to escape it, and we find other planets to colonize, Star Wars, Star Trek, all that other stuff. But the reality is that the Bible teaches us that until he comes again, we're bound by this.
Yeah.
Right? This is our habitat. This is our home. Okay?
Okay.
Is making sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So God's going to use this throughout the Bible. In fact, we've already read some other scriptures before in Isaiah and stuff. God, he'll say something, will say, I'm the God who created da 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 da, and on and on. That's who he is. And he defines himself by Genesis. I think it's Romans chapter 1. And basically God, this whole thing that God put in place, Paul tells us that, people are without excuse. All you got to do is look at this earth that we live on and understand that God exists. Because there's no way, as much as they try to explain it, like we said, where'd the seeds come from? To even start that, and all the different types, where did they come from?
Yeah, we know how they reproduce. They can always, where'd the seed come from initially?
Yes. Where'd all that stuff come from? That's the old joke about get your own dirt.
Yeah.
When Satan says that he wants to be God and he can do all these things, get your own dirt. All right. So we've got the earth is being formed, right? He separated it. He's got now dry land. He's seeding the land to provide vegetation. And then what's next? So he's still got no living beings, nothing living, right? Like we would think about as living.
Right. Well, the vegetation, but we went over the light, sun, moon, and stars. You want to go down the rabbit hole of that being the fourth day?
No, we're okay. Then let's go to the fourth day now. Yeah, well, let's do the fourth day. And God said, let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to separate the day from the night. I thought he did that in the very beginning. Boom, night and day.
Well, he separated light and darkness.
Yes.
I guess he called the light was called day and the darkness was called night.
Because it's called night. But then he says on the fourth day, he's going to say, let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark seasons and days and years, and let them be lights in the expanse of the sky to give light on the earth. So he's not just talking about the sun, he's talking about all the stars, right? Because that's how we tell time.
Yeah.
And he said, and it was so, and God made two great lights out of all of this, because the stars are not great lights. He called two great lights of this. And what are the two great lights?
The sun and the moon.
The sun and the moon. And he put that's all in place because the moon illuminates at night.
Yeah.
It's just a lesser light is what it does. And then God set them in the expanse of the sky to give light on the earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. So now this is where in day 4, this is where he's separating days and nights on the earth.
Yeah.
So in all this formation, in the fourth day, he separates days and nights. And then the fifth day, now he's going to go and he's going to start creating life on the earth. Where's the life created first? Not on the land. It's created in the
sea and in the air.
Yeah. And that's where you get people that say, oh, and yeah, we came out of the sea, and then all of a sudden the fish knew how to walk and then became man and all that stuff in creation. He doesn't tell us that. But basically what he says is that God created all the living creatures of the sea,
And the air.
right? And then the birds of the air. So he's still not on the ground, even though he's done vegetation, right?
Yeah.
He's still not on the ground. And then he tells them, interesting, he tells them to do what?
Multiply.
Well, be fruitful. That's exactly what he told man.
Yeah.
You know, so do creatures who aren't man kind of do they understand, do they have some type of understanding who God is and that they're created?
It's an interesting question. I'd almost say they'd have to. They have to obey him. So
Oh, you know, because the writers of the Bible talk about if man were quiet, even the rocks would cry out, right?
Yeah.
Even the rocks would cry out. And as a matter of fact, I'm just thinking, I have to go to the book of Exodus. I think I found it after. So let me look here real quick because it's an interesting quote.
because I know too, like after the flood, that's when he says the fear of man is put into all the animals.
Yes, but I'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay, quit barking for a second. You're bothering me. All right, there, young, there, old lady. All right, let me see if I can find after the flood, because there's a quote in the Bible where he talks about taking the life of man, right? And I'll have to find it and send it to you. But in that quote of taking the life of man, that man is, man is so important. Taking the life of man is really something that he holds people accountable for. But it says in there that he holds the animals accountable for taking the life of man. I have to find that verse. I read that and I said, man, really? So an animal kills man. Man can kill animal and can, he allows them to use the animal as food as long as we don't eat the food that still has the blood in it, right? It can't have the blood in it.
Yeah.
But I'll have to find that scriptures because in there, I thought it was right after the flood and the covenant.
Genesis 9:5 is what this quick search says.
Oh, you found it? Oh yeah, there it is right there. But you must not eat meat that has its lifeblood in it, number 4. And for your lifeblood, I will surely demand an accounting, which we know is in Leviticus and in Exodus. He says, I will demand an accounting from what? Every animal.
Yeah.
And for each man too, I will demand an accounting for the life of his fellow man. So the animal, I will demand an accounting from every animal, not just man, that takes the life of man. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For we were made in the image of God. All right. So he does the sea first, seas in the air, and then at day 5 and day 6, he does everything else. So he's put everything in place, and everything is placed for the land to become habitable. Interesting. So the birds, right, we know that the birds seed. They pick up seed, they do all of that. So we need the birds. So why the fish?
Well, some of the birds eat the fish.
It's that whole cycle, because otherwise, what would the birds eat?
Yeah.
But even the fish, they were large, the Leviathan, right?
Yeah.
The behemoth, which a lot of people believe they were the whales, right? Just these huge fish in the sea itself. So he establishes all this, and once all that gets established, right, then so he does the animals, and then he puts man, he creates man. And when you look through all the accounts of creation, it says that whenever he got done, he says he saw that it was good. But when he creates man, that sixth day, when he created man, he uses another word. He says what? In the beginning, or he said it was very good. So in his creation of man itself, he changes the verbiage of what he, what he believes it to be, and he believes that it was what he created was very good. The creation of you and I were very good. So all of this, and we're going to get into genealogies and stuff starting next week, because we're going to get into the before the flood, and we'll go through the flood, and then once we get beyond the flood, then we're really going to start getting into like genealogies and what happened. But God, in the beginning, God, and he's specifically talking about himself. In the beginning, and he could have said I, but in the beginning, I created the heavens and the earth. So the word for God in Hebrew is what? Do you know?
Elohim.
Elohim, which is what?
Plural.
Plural. And then later on, when he created man, he says, let's create man in our image.
Yeah, let us.
So it's interesting. One of the things that when it says that God created, the heavens and the earth, it's interesting that he, at least with Moses, he refers to himself as the plural, but he calls himself a singular God.
Yeah.
That's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling to me. It's mind-boggling to a lot of people, because there are some people that say when we worship Jesus as God, that we're a pluralistic, right? We're just like the heathens. So the Muslims, they believe in Jesus. They believe that he existed. I have Muslim friends. They're encouraged to read what we call the Bible to understand what Jesus says, but they don't. He's not God.
Yeah.
So John starts out his scriptures. He starts out his writings. He says, "In the beginning," which is interesting because John went back and started his account of Jesus the same way Genesis is started, in the beginning. Right before everything exists, in the beginning. Have you seen the show? Have you been watching the show? And we're
The Chosen, I think.
Yeah,
I have not yet. No.
So in there, John is talking to Mary, Jesus' mother, and Jesus has already been put on the cross, and Mary's trying to tell John, trying to comfort John because Jesus is gone, and he talks about he's got to write this down. He's got to write this down. He wants to get it written down, so for posterity, and while everybody's still there to get everybody's kind of recollections and stuff. And he goes, I don't know where to start. And I think it's Mary looks at him and she goes, well, just start in the beginning.
Nice.
So it was nice. But he says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And we know that when he talks about the Word, he's talking about Jesus, right? In the beginning was Jesus existed. He was with God, and he was God. He was with God in the beginning. So he goes all the way back, which is important for us as Christians to understand, right? That Jesus existed before all this even came into play. So when God became flesh and dwelt among men, he goes all the way back to when all this stuff, even before all this stuff came into play. That's what John tells us.
Yeah.
That he was in the beginning. Through him, all things were made, even time. Without him, nothing was made that has been made, not a thing. In him was life, and that life was the light of men. So what he means there is to understand who God is, we need to understand who Jesus is. Because he was there even before, from the beginning. In Isaiah 42, remember we read this, and he says, I, the Lord, after he talks about this is what the God the Lord says, who created the heavens and earth, stretched them out, spread out the earth, and then all that comes out of it and gives breath to the people. He goes through the same sequence. It's not a different sequence than what we just read. And he says, I have called you in righteousness. That's Jesus. I will take hold of your hand. I will keep you to make you to be a covenant for the people and a light for the Gentiles. And then John talks about that light. In him was life, and the life was the light of men, not just the Jews, of all of us. The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness did not understand it. Right? They did not understand it. So I like the way that John starts, because John starts just like Genesis starts, in the beginning.
Yeah.
Why he did that? Was it purposeful? I believe it was. Because he goes back to the readers and he says, if you go back to Genesis, Jesus, who we know as Jesus, is a man, but also he was God, and he put all this in place. Throughout the Bible, it references God many, many times, references himself as the God of creation. Right? That's who he is. And go through the Old Testament, and he makes a prediction. He says, I'm the God that laid all this out. You think you have God, you tell him what's to come. Right? So I like to talk about this because we talk about him creating all of this stuff, but he created in all of this, he also created time. He put time in this thing called time. He put it into play. And then what he did is that in the account of Moses, he just gave him a reference, and he said, the first act of creation. Now there's a lot of people that talk about, what that really was. It really a 24-hour day or whatever, and was really, created in a week. I personally, he uses the word day because that was something that people could understand. Right? It was a time frame, if you will, that people could understand. So he divides up creation in segments. First segment, second segment, third segment. To give it to mankind, he says, okay, that segment that we're going to define as a day, in the first day, all of that. So you and I have already talked about, if day 7 is a day of rest and he rested on the 7th day, when does the 7th day end if it's a day? So you can't go with 24 hours, because he created all those in 7 days, 6 days, and then it says he rested on the 7th day. What's he doing after that? If it's 24 hours, what's he doing? We know he's not in creation anymore. He's not creating anything. He's done with creating all of this, the canopy, right? The protection from the sun, the moon, all that. He's already created all of this. He's not creating anymore. Biblically, when does he create again? When time ends. When this time thing that we call time, when it ends. When he talks about the end, he talks about the New Jerusalem, right? And all of stuff. And that's going to be put in place in a condition where there'll be no time. It says he'll be our light. There'll be no moon and all this. It'll be timeless. There'll be no cycling anymore to tell time.
Yeah.
It boggles the mind to think about it. So from the beginning, when he says, I'm the Alpha and the Omega, I'm the beginning and the end of what we call time. What we call time. In the end of what we call time, he's going to go back. His rest period is over, and he's going to go. And mankind we've all done all this stuff we're going to talk about in the Bible, but then he's going to recreate. His rest cycle's done. He's going to recreate. That's why I believe that I don't know if we're talking millions of years, in terms of time, but how long this was. But if the account of man is accurate, and it's going to be 7,000 years from the time of Adam, when we've been through that, trying to put all the numbers down until he creates again. If it's 7,000 years, that from the time of man, then that's the rest period he's talking about. On the seventh day, he rested. Now, that doesn't mean, and I got to be careful, and we've talked about this, that doesn't mean he's inactive. I'm not a deist, right? That he's put all this in play. We read last week from Ben Franklin. He's put all this in play and he doesn't care. We don't worship a God who doesn't care. He created us and he cares about us. Now, why doesn't he intervene in everything? Why do good people die? Why do you lose your kid? Why all that stuff? We don't know. And there's been lots of books, why does God allow suffering and all of that stuff? I don't know. Why did Job, who was a righteous man, lose everything? Lose all of his kids, lose everything. Now, God gave it all back to him in the end. But I mean, if it were me, what? But can you give me Joel back? Can you give me Celeste back? Can you give me Jesse back? They might have been a pain in the butt in my side from time to time, but I want my kids back. See what I'm saying? Even though he gave it back, my understanding would be like, wow, that's really rough. So why God didn't, and I'm not going to answer that question because I'm not God and I don't know why we have to go through all the things that we do. I just know this, a couple of things, that if suffering were to end when you accepted Jesus, everybody would accept Jesus.
Yeah.
If you had all the money you needed, everybody would accept. And then where would faith come in? Right? Because then people aren't really accepting Jesus because they believe. They're accepting Jesus because what? I want life to be easy. Yeah. This guy called Jesus will take care of all this and life will be easy. And instead of having to go to work, I'm going to just be hiking and camping and all of my whole life. So I don't know the answer to that. I do know this, that God does, and the Bible tells us that he does intervene in this from time to time. I was doing a study. We'll have to do it sometime, and it's almost time for you to go. I was doing a study one time in terms of, what was I going to say? Why God intervened from time to time, and we have the people that he intervened through, but he didn't. There are millions of people that have lived since the time of creation, and it doesn't say that it's just, this thing is going forward. So I want to tell you. So when you get into the Old Testament, especially, it talks about, the fall of Satan.
Yeah.
Satan accuses God, of people loving him, but he didn't create robots, and that's where free will comes in. So I started to study, I'll have to do it with you sometime, in terms of the great trial, where God says, show me your evidence. Like, there's going to be a trial.
Yeah.
He's
the judge.
There's going to be a trial and there's going to be evidence. And it's interesting, in the faith chapter in Hebrews, is what to say about faith. The statement is interesting. Faith is the
evidence of things
not seen, of things hoped for.
Yeah.
I always look at it and I go, oh, so in the great trial, when Satan accuses God and it's going to be the Christians, it's not going to be, right, we accepted Jesus, but we accepted him in faith. And that faith is evidence. It's going to come to a court of law and go, you want evidence? Here's the evidence. Joel, things didn't go exactly as he wanted them to go, but he didn't give up and he still had faith. Right? So does Joel believe in me? His faith is the evidence. It's the evidence of things hoped for. It's the evidence of things unseen. Okay? So we're going to start next week. We'll do some more. I'll send you something, but I want to, and I know we've talked about it several weeks, but we need to establish, in my mind, before we get into the scriptures, that God is this God who we worship through Jesus, this God who we worship is the God who knows everything. He's done everything. He's put all this in place, and he's established himself as that is me. But right, Moses, these people that you brought out of Egypt, they need to understand the God that they are worshiping, the God that they are following, is the God who put all this in place. There's no other God, and he'll say it. There's no other God like me. Let them come forward and tell you what the future is going to hold. And he says right now, he says they can't do it. They just can't do it because they don't know. I'm the one that did this from the beginning. Even time.
Yeah.
You know, when the trumpet of the Lord shall sound and time shall be no more. So we're not going to be bound by time anymore, which is really bizarre to think about. We're just not, at some point in the future, we're not going to be bound by time. All right.
Yeah, we grow up thinking we're going to live forever in a sense of unlimited time. But the reality is time won't exist, and we can't, like, our minds can't comprehend. Like, what do you mean there's no time? We just are.
I don't even know if we're going to be bound by 3 dimensions.
I don't think we will be. I personally, part of the fall was that disconnection of God was, because it talks about Adam and Eve walking in the garden and like having an actual, like, they walked with him and spoke with him. And I think the whole nakedness, right, is like they lost. I think they were disconnected from what science calls the extra dimensions that we can't see and interact with.
And
I think too, we hold on too much to the, you talked about the whole suffering, right? I think a lot of people use that as an excuse not to love and believe in God, but I think we hold too tightly to what God calls, just our life is a breath, a vapor here. And it's, you brought up Job, but have you ever looked into Job and comparing what he had before and his blessings at the end?
He had more at the end than he did in the beginning. I know that.
So this is interesting, right? So in the beginning, it says he has 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen. I'll just use those 3. You get to the end, and God says he blessed them double, right? And it says he gave them 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, and 1,000 yoke of oxen and donkeys. What's interesting is he had 7 sons and 3 daughters that were all killed.
Yeah.
And when you get to the end, when he's given a double portion, he's given 7 sons and 3 daughters. So why not 14 and 6?
I'm going to think about that this week.
So the theory that the concept is we hold too tight to this life. So he lost them here in the physical realm, but they're not like dead. They're just physically dead. He still has those 7 sons and 3 daughters. He'll have them in eternity. That's why he only got 7 and 3 more, because that was his double. He never really lost them. It's an interesting concept to think about when you look at that correlation. It's like,
I'm going to look at that this week. We'll talk about it next week a little bit. All right.
All right.
You need to go.
Yes, sir.
Love you. Bye-bye.